welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is parenting through exhaustion. So if you find yourself exhausted just like Bridget and I, then we also hope that we spread a little bit of love and a little bit of conscious light onto something that you're going through and it becomes a little bit more easeful for you. So that's what we hope to achieve in today's podcast with you and for you. Before we jump into What?
Go. I was going to add a little story, but go with your spiel.
I'm like, don't tell me my internet is gone again. Sorry. So please sign up to nourishingthemother.com.au because we're so rad. You just would love to be part of our community emails. That's what we're going with today. So scroll on down to the red banner, drop in your email address, and every so often we would love to be able to send you an email that drops a little bit more nourishing of your inner mother and outer mother into your inbox. And we would love to let you know that this month we have Liberate happening in Soul Driven Motherhood, which is our community that gathers every week for some conscious conversations, for some top-notch mama support on this conscious parenting journey, for Q&A access to Bridget and I as you navigate what is a pretty tricky journey of parenting consciously and finding and evolving yourself as a mother and a lover in the process. So hopefully you're enjoying our life hacks for the month of February, which we're doing as part of our collaboration with the Household Advisor. So if you're really ready to up the support that you have, then come join our Soul Driven Motherhood community.
The story I was going to go with was that there was some chat in Julie's Embark Women's Embodied Leadership group around the evolution of our podcast, and it really was a pause for reflection around just how long we've continued to show up week by week for the last 5.5, nearly 6 years, and what content creation can look like. And today it looked like, have you got any ideas? I haven't got any ideas. I'm wiped out. Oh, so am I. What about parenting through exhaustion?
It's such a great story, isn't it? Because I actually think it's so reflective. Like, we forget so often in this process of content creation that whatever is happening for you is happening for me, and vice versa. Like, we're just reflections of a collective whole, right?
Yeah. And we've really trusted it throughout our podcasting journey that what is going on for us in some way is going to touch you where it needs to touch you, and that will hopefully be just the medicine that you need when you decide to tune in. And that's what we're hoping is the case with this episode. So thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. We really do honour what a privilege that is to sit in your ears and upon your heart, and that you share that time in your life, because we know how precious that is with us. Don't take that lightly. And we have always had an ethos that is the utmost integrity for the women that we're here to serve, that is the platform, that is our podcast. So, you know, we're always really deeply grateful that we have the opportunity to do that. And we hope that you feel that integrity as it evolves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, parenting through exhaustion. It's big, right? Especially when you wake up in the morning and you're already tired and you haven't even got out of bed, because that might be exactly where you find yourself for days on end with little people.
Yes.
And it is a mind game, but also a task, when you want to do it consciously, of deep embodiment and permission to embody what it feels like to be in a tired body.
I actually think the greatest service we can give our exhaustion is to feel our bone deep tiredness as fully as we can feel it, rather than trying to move away from it and distance ourselves from it or plaster cast over the top of it and create, you know, such fragility. I would rather that we moved deeply into the pool of whatever you find there in your exhaustion, because that's purposeful. You might find pain or regret or grief or deep sadness. And when you enter those that you've been running from, and sometimes that's the orchestration of your exhaustion, you find a light of awareness that sits underneath that heart hurt or soul ache. And often I think that's the gift of exhaustion.
Because it strips you bare. And when you're stripped bare, you realize who you are without your defenses.
Yeah.
And you're called to feel deeper.
Because in actual fact, when you don't have all of your normal support structures or capabilities, you actually realize your capacity for emotional intelligence.
Yeah. That's true. And sometimes it's a lot less than what you think, what you like to think it is, when you've got all of your structures around you and you've had your rest and you've got your spaciousness and all of that.
Yeah.
Your bandwidth, which on those days can look enormous, can on those days of exhaustion be minuscule, and that every sound feels like fingers going down a chalkboard. And like a child's laughter can feel like it's rattling in your brain, right?
Yeah, totally. So where do you want to take this conversation? I think that maybe a bit of entry point into story would be beautiful. So where you find yourself in exhaustion?
Yeah, where I find myself. I feel like it's kind of morphing. So it began, I don't know, maybe a month ago with my toddler waking up because of teething at like 4:30 in the morning. So I was going through this process of, okay, we can work with this. We'll get up and walk. And we were going walking, which was really good because then I started to look forward to it. So I wasn't resisting the nights or resisting the mornings, knowing what was coming. I felt like I had empowered myself with it. And then that kind of shifted, and she started waking up later, but was waking through the night. So then it was kind of like I'm constantly waking, and then I'm actually not getting that outlet in the morning. Kind of coinciding with school starting and all of the things. And then it's morphed into a cold. And then when she, you know, when our babies particularly and toddlers have colds, they're just not sleeping as well. So it just feels like days and days and days and days and days of interrupted sleep, with a slight reprieve on weekends when my husband's home. So it is just that getting used to, I don't know, like almost like an edge of depletion that comes with sleep deprivation.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, and just trying to work with that as the season that I'm in, and not allow that to pull down kind of every area of life by virtue of it, the weight of it. And so it's looking a lot like, what do I need in the day to be able to, you know, do all of the things that parenting and life is asking of me. And often I find what's most useful with this is what in my kids is most hard to be with right now. And how is that reflective of what I'm trying to keep a lid on as part of my way to deal? And often it'll be my 4-year-old's big feelings will be the thing that's, if I find her harder to be with, then I'm like, oh, okay, I need to create an outlet for that to move within me. So when she's, if I feel like she's whingy or she's just got big feelings constantly, then yes, of course, there's the work to hold her space, but you can only hold your own child's space to the degree to which you're able to hold your own. And so, like today, for example, when I realized that I was getting pretty irritated at her, after I dropped her off at kinder, I came back and I was doing some like scrapbooking school stuff for my 7-year-old. And then I just really felt like this tug at my heart of just heaviness, like the exhaustion combined with like an edge of sadness. And so I was like, oh, okay, I see that invitation. I have this space with just one child. I'm going to enter that. And so then I've got this playlist which is called Feel It All. And it's basically songs that I know are going to tap me right into the feeling that I need to feel and cry through my body. And when I can take conscious ownership of that and actually allow that almost like as a medicine for me, that even though I feel kind of, you know, those days when you've cried a lot and you kind of feel a little bit like washed out, I feel washed out from it, but also renewed by it because I've been able to meet something deeper, which has then created like greater capacity to be with the movement of that. So that's part of it. So rather than trying to push or to make my kids feel responsible for like my tiredness or throw it at my husband, it's like, okay, what's this here? Like, I'm here. How can I move with it? How can I find somewhere to be with it with more presence than just like the hard kind of slog through stuff? So that's kind of how I've dealt with it today.
Beautiful. Was your toddler awake while you were feeling your feelings?
Yeah, she was. It was great. My kids are pretty used to like my conscious efforts to feel my feelings. So she just climbs up and gives me a cuddle, like, but in a way that's not like, because I really like to tune into her particularly to see how she takes it. But she was just like pulled towards me in a way that was just affectionate, you know, like just that kind of almost like that early empathy response that children develop. And so it was really beautiful because then I just got to feel it, and I really was saying to her, I've just got some feelings I need to feel. And in fact, I then moved over to the floor and started to move my body through it. And then she was climbing on my back, like just, you know, almost like a little like bear cub, you know, on its like mother's back. And that just felt really good to just be in it with her and to own it in my body in such a way that there was no edge of it that she could feel responsible for, if that makes sense.
It's really good.
It was really nice. And I think because I just had the one, I was able to be with it more as opposed to more around me, taking me away from the presence of feeling it.
What do you say to the mums who are worried about the, in inverted commas, impact that their emotional being with has on their children?
I think it's about how you own it, like your emotional release in a way that isn't making our children responsible for making us feel something, but rather like I'm feeling like this right now and I'm choosing to move with it in this way. And then I think when that alignment is there within ourselves, our children sense that as opposed to recoil from it if they feel like they're somehow in trouble. You know, like the child who feels like they're in trouble is likely going to shrink away from the emotional mother. But the child who feels safe in that will be able to be with, like you're being with it, or move toward it because there's there's safety in it, I think. So I would say kind of check your own intention with it and your ability to take ownership. And then I think our children, it's actually beautiful modeling for them, because I think so many of us as children and I don't have really ever, I don't think I have any recollection of my mother consciously crying in front of me, like none. My mum was like stoic, so I didn't see much. And so what that doesn't give you, children miss out on understanding emotional range and safety in range when they don't see their mothers move with that. And so I actually think that it's really healthy for them to see that, and for them to see, just like we know intuitively that with our children, you just move with their feeling. You allow the feeling to have its flow and its end, and you know that when the child has fully felt it, then the need to express that's gone because they've fully felt it. The same with us, but it's like us taking ownership of what we're seeking to teach our child. It's that next level, but that's the biggest blueprint. That's even bigger than us saying to them, you know, I'm here, I'm listening, or it's okay to cry. We need to actually display that for that to be a true imprint. So that's what I'd say.
It's a really beautiful explanation, I think.
Thanks. And I know, like, you know, you and I come at this very differently, because you had a mother who didn't cap her emotional range whatsoever.
I always find this so fascinating. Like, it intrigues me no end. I feel like you and I are like husband and wife in so many ways, and two sides of the universe in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's fascinating you no end. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And also, even in terms of, like, you and I talk about, like I've, you know, we know that yours and my nervous systems are trained differently, and your nervous system is like
heightened.
But its capacity to hold range and intensity is greater because it had to be, and because it was bathed in it, right?
Well said, because for everyone that had a, you know, crazy ass mother, that's the benefit.
Yeah, it's a benefit, because you've just had to stretch and build and stretch and build and stretch and build and stretch and build. Because there was no other way. Whereas if you had my, like, modeling, you haven't had a lot of range built into that. Like, your nervous system, and even my mum's own nervous system, I know, is like limited. Her capacity is limited, potentially as a result of her wounding, I think.
Of course, but isn't that fascinating, just to be the overseer of that, just to see it?
Yeah, yeah. It is, because then you go, oh, you can get curious, and you move beyond judgment, beyond it being right or wrong, and you just go, oh, that's how we're primed. And yes, we can stretch those bandwidths, but also, like, if you consider a lifetime of patterning is really big and really deep. And so it's a little bit like when, Julie, you talk about, like, not blowing out your partner's nervous system with your revealing of emotion, because they don't have a blueprint for that. Same thing with ourselves and what we ask ourselves to meet in our children. And I don't think that our children bring us anything we can't deal with, because there's a kind of unconscious dynamic there. But also, there'll be points at which you won't have the bandwidth on a day to deal with what's coming at you, and that's okay. Know that there'll be days when you do, that make up for the ones that you don't. It's not a hard and fast rule.
It's really beautiful. I really love the piece that you brought to that conversation as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. What would you say with parenting with exhaustion?
I'm not sure I'm full of wisdom yet, because I think I'm too in it. I last week was diagnosed with not diagnosed, you know, tick the boxes of oh my God, my mind just went completely blank. Adrenal
fatigue or something? Yeah.
Yeah, adrenal exhaustion, fatigue, whatever, same. So last year, when I was writing my book and went through, like, a cataclysmic, almost monthly nervous system overload and felt like I had to continuously up level my capacity to do life and what felt like war on a lot of levels in my own mind and my own construction of reality. There was a part of me that was watching my body do something it had never done before and going, well, this is different.
This is new terrain here.
Yeah. You don't feel like you normally feel. Like it was like walking around with a body that was not a suit that was mine. It was a really weird experience for me. And it kept like, this is my body, but I can't get rid of this overwhelming anxiety and this chronic fatigue that I was so exhausted. In the back of my mind, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've got cancer because I'm so tired. I've never known tiredness like this. Like my body's normally pretty vital. Like I know how my body feels. It's alive and it's vital and it feels like a sea anemone with the world. And I was just like fighting to survive every day was what it felt like internally. And at the same time, asking myself, well, this is an up-leveling of practice. How much can you hold, Julie? And asking myself to be with my anxiety and to up-level and move beyond my own limitations of what I perceived my anxiety and exhaustion presented me with. So what got me the most, though, was the overwhelming fatigue. Was just I could fall asleep or felt like I could just crash and sleep for a solid month, like any second of the day. It was it was like a full-on experience. But I'm also a mum of 4 kids. And I also had a book launch that I had to show up for, and businesses and courses and clients that I needed to show up for. And we just got out of lockdown and Christmas was coming. So I really have a choice in the pace of my life in a lot of ways. So every day I just kind of woke up with the mantra that today was my practice. And so today I would show up for practice. And I would learn how to move my anxiety and, breathe it out and blow it out is what it felt like through my feet out of my body and bring myself back present in the moment. And every time the anxiety felt like a wave that would drown me, I would be like, get super still, get super present where you are and drain it out of your body until you feel the universe again. So I just used it as practice. And I let myself have like small little kips on the couch whenever I could, around maybe I was like, okay, so you need to just watch the TV for half an hour so I can sleep because I can't move. I stopped doing quite so much cleaning around the house because it was the thing that I was like, I don't even give a shit like that. If I'm going to lose anything in my life, that can fall by the wayside. I don't care. So I really let the desire to tidy and clean and keep house just really be the thing that fell away so that I could bring whatever I had to myself, my business, and my clients, because that was deeply purposeful and was a funny experience of also giving and receiving energy at the same time. So I knew that if I let that go, it wouldn't give me more energy, it would give me less. So being in my own soul's purpose gives me energy. So I just had to get through the mental battle of getting there for that, really. And parenting, so it was fine. It was pretty fine with the big kids because they're, they really, as they get older, completely get humanity, or at least my kids do in a lot of ways. But it was my 3-year-old because, of course, they don't have the capacity outside of self. Their world is self. So it was with her that I really had to find myself just moving a little bit slower, creating activities that involved more slowness, or, okay, if I just go to the park or go to the beach for the morning, we can rest for the afternoon. So I just tried to structure my days according to what I perceived I had capacity for, knowing that my capacity was down, and in the background going, this is fucking weird. Why? This is beyond a joke. Like, this is not iron that I'm low on. There is something, it felt like something sinister because my body felt so different to what it normally felt like. And I even had said to Nick a few times, it's so weird. It's like something's been like a switch has been flicked in my body from the anxiety peak of the book experience. And it's like it just hasn't switched off again. It's just stayed on. Anyway, so we're kind of like basically at Christmas now, a bit before, I suppose. And I was working, I'd gone to see my homeopath, and I was like, I really need to look into this. And she was like looking at all things going, you know, I really think we probably could do a really comprehensive hormone profile. So I did all of this private testing to do basically a 3-day hormone profile. And I was thinking, I'm probably going to be perimenopausal. Maybe it'll show up, you know, something sinister or cancerous. Maybe, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so I just showed up for my test results last week. And what was incredible out of that, and I can't believe that my naturopathic brain didn't even put all of the symptoms together, but it's like a picture perfect adrenal exhaustion, because I was having this like sinus nose issues, which I knew were cortisol, and I couldn't work out how, because I thought I was feeding my adrenals. So I had this nose thing going on, and incredible exhaustion and weight gain that was weird. Like I have a larger body type, but usually it still feels pretty alive, whereas this felt stagnant, which of course is insulin resistance based on you're fighting a war all of the time. So your body's like, hold on to that energy because we might need those stores for war, you know. And when she showed me my test results, I was really quite blown away. Actually, it was a really, really great experience because it charts your hormone profile over a 24-hour period. So it shows you what it's doing. And from the second I woke up, like literally from the second I woke up, my cortisol went whoosh, straight up, like off the charts. She was like, this spike is ridiculous. And then it stayed there, way up there, which is where my anxiety was and all the things that were happening with my body, until 5 p.m. when it went into such a crash. She's like, I'm surprised you weren't just like passed out. And I'm like, yep, well, that was how I felt.
Yeah.
So it was actually really confirming to see it. And funnily enough, the rest of my hormones were fantastic, which I also wasn't expecting. She's like, it's like you're a lactating woman. Your hormones are amazing. I was like, I feel like a lactating woman. It's, you know, so great, it's not cancer. Thank you. So adrenal exhaustion. And the thing with that was it was really affirming, because I all of a sudden went, oh, God, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. This is not me not coping. This is like a switch has gone off in my body for war, and it just hasn't switched off again. Mm. So now that I know that and can see that, I can really honor that in a whole other way. So essentially at the moment I'm in a practice that's beat the spike. So because I wake up and then within 10 minutes my cortisol is through the roof, I'm trying to beat the spike. So the spike's at 6 a.m. So I'm getting up at 5:15, 5:30, and I'm meditating for half an hour. So I take magnesium upon waking and meditate for half an hour. And if I do that solidly as a practice, it changes the rest of my day. So my cortisol doesn't get up as high. And then I'm not fighting my nose stuff all day, and I'm not as exhausted and depleted all day. So that first morning is really important for my cortisol. And then I'm taking all of the supplements to support adrenal gland production, and also shitty sleep. If you're high cortisol, you're not sleeping well. So this is part of the depletion picture. So then herbs and super high dose magnesium and a few second phase liver things to really support the system that is the adrenal secretion pathway. So I was like, that's too naturopathic, Julie, wind it back. So
I'm interested. I'm listening.
Okay. So what I loved about that was what I like about pathology is that it's so confirming sometimes when you realize it's not all in your head. So sometimes I really love those numbers because there's a certain sense of validity to them, and then an action plan that goes with it that's completely chartable. And I also actually really love that I can see in real time those changes, and I can track them. And
you can track your own like feelings shift and change and your body respond. Like, I mean, that's empowering.
Empowering. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like beating myself up going, you're so tired. Like I took 2 weeks off from work over Christmas, And I've never taken time off work. Like, I've never taken time off work because our work is mobile.
Yeah.
We always work.
Yeah.
Because we work around the kids, right? So we don't do like solid days. We like do dibs and dabs around.
Here, there, everywhere.
We never take time off because we just do dibs and dabs, and that's just our life anyway. So, but I actually took 2 weeks off because I was so exhausted. I was like, you have to. So, I think that all combined together was a really beautiful experience to go, oh, yeah, your body needs restoration. So sleeping better 100% changed it. So as soon as I'm on, you know, herbs and magnesium, my sleep's gotten better, which means my restoration is better. I'm trying really hard to, and I have so far shown up for my morning routine, which absolutely has an influence literally for the rest of my day. And I still find that surprising. Like, I even thought I'm just going to not do one day because there's a few nights a week where my kids have quite late sport, particularly on a Friday night. We're not home before midnight usually. So I was like, Saturday morning I might just sleep in till, you know, who knows, 6:30, 7 o'clock when Gwen gets up. It's not like a massive sleep in or anything, but it's not 5 a.m. And so I tried doing it that way and it didn't work. My body had already peaked and my nose was going spastic and I had anxiety for the rest of the day.
Wow.
I know. So I was kind of like, oh, damn it.
And what does parenting with anxiety look like for you compared to parenting when you're not in that anxious state?
Do you know, there's something fascinating to me about anxiety, which is, I'm just trying to think about how I'll say this. That anxiety feels like an encasement. It feels like I'm inside a glass bauble hanging on a Christmas tree, or a plastic one maybe. So weirdly, there's a certain sense of safety that I feel if I really, like, this is me stepping into my anxiety. This is not me pretending I don't have anxiety and like hyper functioning on the outside. I'm trying to clean the shit out of my world and manage it and, you know, be super perfectionist and clean and organized and ordered and sorted, because if there's a tiny bit of mess, I'm not going to be okay. And if no one does exactly what they're supposed to do, I'm not going to be, not that.
I think I've ever seen you talk that fast.
I can go pretty fast. Not that.
Yeah.
Because I see my emotional state and my capacity to regulate as practice. So when I let myself sink into and towards my anxiety rather than running from it, what I find myself in is like a bit of a bubble between me and the rest of the world. And that is an intriguing experience. I find it intriguing anyway, because it is almost like there's a muffling or a buffer zone between the outside and the inside. And there seems to be a time delay, like a lag between my inner expression and the outer world and the outer world and my inner. It literally feels like I'm in some sort of weird warp. So part of me enjoys that experience. And I wonder this about anxiety, that it allows you to be so self-focused that you're not really present in the outside world.
Because anxiety is a focus on the future. It's future focus. So you are constantly like seeing how you're going to be able to maneuver through the future.
Yeah. But even when I remove that and just stay in anxiety, as in
the feelings in your body,
it's still about me. I'm still in me. Trying to find me. It's like through quicksand or something. I'm still trying to, in a bubble about me, trying to find me.
Yeah. Sounds like a whole lot of
sci-fi tripping. So parenting with anxiety, as I experience, and I recognize that I have a plethora of tools and an emotional and mental capacity of yogic proportions of which the majority of society does not have. So I also say that with that level of recognition. I am masterful at handling my body. So someone who is not masterful will likely not have that experience or even be able to enter it. This is simply my experience of it. So I'm fascinated by it because it's like a sacred pause in a lot of ways. It's like the speeding up in actual fact slows you down. You know, like it's a weird warp.
Yeah. Like you kind of almost see the part of you that wants to, but then you're actually observing yourself in it.
Yeah. It's really weird. So I actually don't find parenting with anxiety hard, but that's because I'm not trying to create a perfect external world in which I'm not triggered. I'm not asking anyone to do that for me, because when I'm triggered, it's an opportunity for me to practice and find something out about myself. And I become more masterful each time I do that, which means I'm more masterful in my world. But if I make how I am completely dependent upon how they are, I'm not a master, I'm a slave.
Oh, that's good. So if I make how I am completely dependent on how they are, I'm not a master, I'm a slave.
Yeah.
That's a quote.
Thanks, mate.
Because actually that's what makes parenting hard. Parenting in and of itself is not exhausting. It's exhausting when you try to maneuver the outside world to be the way that you want it. Outside world, i.e. children.
Yeah. So anxiety for me is just like a call to the mat, like a call to practice. Like every time it rises, I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity to be with it. And then when it leaves my body again, because it does, it's just a finite experience. And then when I feel it fully, it dissolves and leaves again. And then, you know, of course, in adrenal exhaustion, it's on a repeat pattern, but still there's waves to that, no different to an ocean. So when it leaves, I find huge capacity and blank space and fatigue, because that's a lot of energy to deal with that, where I just go slower with my kids. So actually I have less expectation on myself as I exist in the outside world and rely solely on the inside world and the capacity to meet it.
That's actually a really good point, because I find myself too, if I'm like flatlined or just my capacity is much less, then I give myself permission to do things I wouldn't normally do, like lay on the couch or like lay down with my kids and play, or, you know, like, because I'm not trying to do everything else at the same time.
Exactly.
So it can actually be a gift to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it's hard, I let it be hard, and I just think of it like a negotiation. Okay, I need this, you need that. How are we going to make this work? I think no different to a toddler who goes, I want the cookie. And like, you can't have the cookie. And they're like, I'm going to find a way to have the cookie. You know, I kind of look at it the same. Everything's up for negotiation, right? So we've got to find the currency.
And what it does do as well is it puts the focus or the lens on the things that you think that you need, or the way that you think your world needs to be, and it invites you into that negotiation. You know, it challenges your own belief about how things have to be. Because when you're kind of functioning on not a lot, you have to pare things back to what is most nourishing for you or most necessary, and anything that was filler kind of has to go, which can actually be a great edit as well, which is good. Like, it's actually like spring cleaning.
I actually think it's a bit like Kali-esque. If we, like, everyone loves, you know, the god Kali, but sometimes it will look like this. Like carving and slicing and stripping looks like a descent. What's really meaningful when life begins to leave your body?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read out the things that you'd sort of thrown out before we started this podcast, and let's do a reconciliation of where we're at and where we're at before the end. How to resource yourself, the self-check of perspective. I wrote down impeccability, because showing up for yourself and whatever your cores or pillars of nourishment are during this time become absolutely paramount. But if you're going to flake out on your own pillars of nourishment, then you will not be nourished, and neither can the outside world nourish you. So I think this is the call to be absolutely impeccable with how you show up for your own self-nourishment, and that you're disciplined with yourself.
Yeah.
It's funny how we will expect everyone to meet the rules, obligations, expectations, words that they've said to us, and that we require, that they're so trustable, we trust them completely, yet we ourselves offer ourselves none of those traits. So witnessing the part of you that doesn't want to do the thing and wants to flake out and hasn't really got the spine to show up for it and doesn't really want to, and doing it anyway, because you know it leads you somewhere that's more healthful than when you currently find yourself. So I just added that in. When you're carrying the weight of the world, the difference between realistic and unrealistic expectations, delegation, and consciously moving with feelings. I feel like we've done consciously moving with feeling. I think that we've touched on perspective. Is there anything else you can talk about with perspective?
I think delegation is a one to touch on in terms of what it can do is it can challenge your identity as well. When you're exhausted and you've built your identity around motherhood or your parenting, there can be a part of you that still wants to force yourself through because it's who you are, or you've defined yourself in this role or by your capacity, and it's difficult then to delegate. But what if actually this phase you're in is the most empowering thing for the whole family, because you get to now look at everything and go, where am I trying to do all the things? And where is there room for somebody else to step up? Either a partner, either children taking more responsibility. It challenges our perception of the way we think things need to be. And delegation can be a really great tool to create capacity in yourself to nourish yourself, because you're not getting the 8th glass of water for a child that can get their water. You're not, being the one to always put the baby to bed or the toddler to bed because your partner can do that, or insert whatever it is that you feel like you have to do. I think that when we're parenting with exhaustion, it's an invitation to do the reconciliation on ourselves and our service, and see where there's an opportunity for somebody else to grow into that too, so that you can step back where you need to, where you could. To look after yourself.
Yes. I think that that's beautifully said and worth doing a self-check on.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What about realistic and unrealistic expectations?
I think it feeds into that a little in terms of looking at whether what you're asking of yourself is realistic based on the developmental stage of your child, perhaps, or also what you're asking of your child. And because sometimes the exhaustion in parenting comes from this completely mismatched agendas, right? Like the parents' values and the child's values, and then not a lot of crossover where they're able to see each other. And that can be exhausting. If you're trying to take a toddler everywhere and the toddler's melting down because it's tired or it's overstimulated, and then you're exhausted from holding that space, then that's an opportunity to go, is this appropriate? And I mean, I know even Julie, you've done this with Gwen, like with basketball and like changing things up to get her babysat, for example, because there's a point at which you go, this isn't working.
Yeah. 100%. I think you've got to do a stock take of realistic and unrealistic expectations across the board when you're in a phase of exhaustion. So on yourself, on your household, on your relationship, and on your parenting, perhaps even on your work. I think you've got to really do a really honest reconciliation of, when you have this amount of energy to give out at the moment, what is most meaningful and where is it most important that it goes? And then where actually is the rest of it not important and part of a construction of identity, which what might happen when you let that crumble? And how can that be a beautiful process?
Yeah, as opposed to something that you want to resist.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you feel? Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I just really want to invite mums to just sink a little deeper into the exhaustion and also notice where you feed the story, because we can also feed the story of our exhaustion, and then that too can become part of our identity. And it can also become a reason to not do things, or a reason to not step beyond the confines of where you find yourself. It can become convenient, right?
Because energy can come from different sources that have nothing to do with doing nothing. So I do my work, I get energy.
Yeah.
I meet with a girlfriend, I get energy. I go to the beach, I get energy.
Yeah. You know, and even like us with this podcast, like there's lots of times we don't feel like doing it, but we always get energy from it. Like we'll always find something to talk about or find inspiration from it. And so it's not, oh God, I'm exhausted, we've got a podcast tonight. It's like, oh,
and I freak out on it, or I collapse.
Yeah.
Showing up for the responsibility of what is ultimately in alignment with my soul. Don't collapse on your own soul.
Yeah. Yeah. So notice your story. A little bit like, you know, I used to have this rigid story before I had children that I needed to have 8 hours sleep, and you know, that meant that I had to be in bed by 11 so I could wake up at 7. Like these ridiculous kind of like rules that I created for myself.
Yeah.
Which were just my creation. And I think sometimes too, we can have these beliefs that we can get stuck in around parenting, or parenting being exhausting or overwhelming, and yes, we need to create space to acknowledge that sometimes that's what it's like. But if we're also always looking to feel that, or looking for evidence of that as a truth, and, you know, you'll notice that if you're constantly saying it in conversation with other mums or other people around you, around what it's like to be a parent, that's interesting to just pay attention to. You know, is that my language? Is that my dialogue? Is that my belief? Why? Why am I holding on to this? And, you know, dare I say, what am I gaining from holding on to this? Because we also are only holding on to certain patterns and stories because we're getting a benefit from it. Because it gives us something to relate to other people about, because it gives us, you know, somebody's giving us, you know, some empathy around it, and we love that relationship for what that offers us. But we don't need to be beholden to that. We can shift and trust that what needs to come through and new can come through when we create a shift. So I'd offer that. Yeah.
Yes. The stories we tell ourselves have a habit of becoming true.
Yeah, it's true. So
really ready to have your stories busted. We'd love to see you in Soul Driven Motherhood. It's the place and space that we both adore to hang out in, because it really is the raddest community of women that you will find who also feel deeply inspired and purposeful in their motherhood. And every month we have new themes on what we delve into and investigate. And in this month, it's how do we clear the clutter of our physical home and do the thing to the space to pave the way for what it is that we're manifesting, stepping into and up to for this year. And we're doing that in collaboration with the household advisor. So we would love to have you in that space with us and beyond.
We would. So to connect with you, Jules,
is julietenner.love. And you, Bridget?
It's suburbansandcastles.com. And connect with Nourishing the Mother. It's nourishingthemother.com.au. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.